This video presents a short history of the Australian Constitution, a story of ambition, conflict and compromise that spans more than half a century. From the first calls for unity in the 1840s, through the Federation Conventions of the 1890s, to the political turmoil surrounding the Hopetoun blunder and the nation's birth on 1 January 1901, this account follows the major events and personalities that shaped the Commonwealth of Australia. Every scene is grounded in historical record, drawn from parliamentary debates, telegrams, private correspondence and contemporary press reports, to capture not just what happened, but how it felt as Australia took its first steps as a nation under its own constitution.
They tell you Federation was born on January 1st, 1901. They tell you it was democracy in action. They tell you the people spoke, and a nation was born. But what they don't tell you, what they buried in archives and gentlemen's agreements, what they wrapped in the silk of royal ceremony, is that the moment our Commonwealth drew breath, democracy held its own. Picture this: March 1900. The Constitution Bill. Our Constitution approved by referendum in 1898 and 1899. Blessed by the people's voice, sails from Australian shores to London town. Edmund Barton, Alfred Deakin, Charles Kingston, James Dixon, Philip Fish. 5 men entrusted with a sacred mission. Bring it back unchanged, bring it back pure and sure. It was approved without alteration. But power has its own appetite. July 9th, 1900. Royal assent, the Queen's seal. Her official blessing. But the document that returns to our shores, not the one the people approved. The United Kingdom Parliament amended the bill. Those changes were lawful under imperial authority. But they were a breach of democratic trust, because they were never sent back to the Australian people for ratification. Rather than delay federation, rather than risk political fallout, the delegates remained silent. The Virgin proclaimed by Queen Victoria on September 17th, 1900, differed from the one the people had approved. And nobody told us. Just in Australia, unaware of the exact amendments, held its referendum on July 31st, 1900. After royal assent had already been given, after the changes had been made, after our constitution had been altered. The Australasian Federation Enabling Act of 1900, Western Australia, legally defined the Constitution as the draft contained in the 5th Schedule, subject to the amendments of the Imperial Parliament. But the ballot paper itself, printed as Schedule 1 of that Act, asked only, "Are you in favor of the Federal Constitution Bill? Yes or no?" The words amended never appeared. The words altered never appeared. By contrast, the 1898 and 1899 referendums in all the other colonies had asked voters to approve the proposed or draft constitution, well before any of the United Kingdom's alterations. Western Australia voted blind on a question that was already a lie. December 15th, 1900. Governor-General Lord Hopetoun arrives in Sydney Harbour, carrying the letters patent like sacred scrolls, letters that empowered him to appoint ministers of state under Section 64 of the Constitution. December 19th, 1900, he commissioned William Lane, Premier of New South Wales, as the first Minister of State. But Hopetoun went further. He authorized Lane to form a ministry, a power not granted by the written Constitution. Section 64 only allowed the governor himself to appoint ministers to administer departments of state, not to delegate that task to another. Nevertheless, Hopetoun's decision was constitutionally sound in intent. He had appointed a colonial premier who held public confidence in his own right. But here's the evidence that transforms everything. December 20th, 1900, Joseph Chamberlain, Britain's colonial secretary, fires off a telegram to Hopetoun. 4 words that shatter the illusion. Please explain the commission. The commission of learn, not congratulations on your decision, not we support your choice, but great surprise felt in London, and please give reasons.
Edmund Barton and Alfred Deakin had other plans. In private correspondence dated December 19th, 1900, they mentioned Hopetoun's lawful decision. Who could have believed that Hopetoun would make such a blunder? Their words, their phrase, the Hopetoun blunder. A phrase they coined themselves to undermine Lyon and position Barton as the preferred choice. Manufactured, calculated, orchestrated. 5 days. 5 days Len attempts to secure support from other colonial leaders. 5 days of doors slammed in faces. 5 days of Barton's faction refusing to serve under him. 5 days of democracy eating itself alive. Christmas Eve, 9 in the evening. Lan returns the commission to the Governor-General. Roughly an hour later, Hopetoun summoned Barton and issued him the same commission. And then the master stroke. A few days later, Deakin presents the ministry list. Not hastily arranged, not improvised, but prearranged. Months, perhaps years in the making. A shadow cabinet already selected, departments already designed, portfolios already distributed. This wasn't opportunism. This wasn't political enthusiasm. This was orchestration, premeditation, a government in waiting, ready to slip seamlessly into power the moment Len stumbled. January 1st, 1901. The Barton ministry sworn in, and with it, words that appear nowhere in our Constitution. Prime Minister, Cabinet. The titles entered use from that day, imported wholesale from British convention, rather than created by Australian law. What should have happened? You see, this convention-based arrangement was tolerable only during the interim period, from January 1st to May 8th, 1901, before the first Parliament sat, when the first Parliament convened on May 9th, 1901. The first Parliament elected by the people. The government should have reverted to the pure written constitution that the people had approved. If those conventions were considered necessary for effective administration, they should have been debated, and then submitted to the people under Section 128 for ratification. Section 128 was right there. The amendment process clear as crystal. Any alteration to the structure of government must be approved by referendum of the people. That referendum never happened. That debate never occurred. That honesty never surfaced. The rise of party rule. And here's something crucial to remember. In 1901, political parties were not legal entities. They were private, unregistered clubs with no corporate status, no constitutional recognition, and no legal accountability. The Constitution says members of Parliament must be directly chosen by the people, not by political organizations, yet these informal groups, formed purely by agreement, gradually gained control over Parliament and government, effectively turning representative democracy into party rule. Imperial Reward. In January 1901, just weeks after his appointment, Barton was made a Privy Councillor of the United Kingdom, a move that appeared far more like imperial reward than coincidence. His allegiance now extended to advising the British Crown directly, even as he led the executive of the new Commonwealth, divided loyalties wrapped in ceremony. January 1903. Barton clashed with Governor-General Lord Tennyson over communications between the Governor-General's secretary, George Stewart, and the British Colonial Office. The matter, documented in Lord Tennyson's official correspondence from January 8, 1903, and in Barton's own letters, shows Barton asserting that
It was the Governor-General's duty to accept the advice of his ministers. Show me that in the Constitution. Point to that clause. Find me that power. You can't because it isn't there. That claim had no foundation in constitutional law. It was a direct imposition of British convention upon the Australian system. It marked the first recorded moment. An Australian Prime Minister sought to make ministerial advice binding, even though no clause in the Constitution gives such power. September 24th, 1903. Barton resigned as Prime Minister. October 5th, appointed to the High Court alongside Samuel Griffith and Richard O'Connor, both architects of the Constitution and therefore personally invested in defending the system they had just cemented. As Quick and Garron's 1901 commentary on Section 128 explains, any alteration to the structure of government, even the introduction or abolition of responsible government, can only be made by referendum of the people, but referendum never occurred by introducing those unauthorized conventions. The Prime Minister, cabinet government, and party control. From May 9th, 1901 onward, Australia's executive structure departed. From the written constitution the people had ratified, while de facto validity has kept the machinery of government running. The structure itself was never constitutionally authorized. In strict reasoning, everything derived from that moment, including the creation of government departments, executive offices, and the acts establishing or empowering them, could be regarded as ultra vires beyond power, because they rest on a foundation, never lawfully amended under Section 128. That reasoning extends to the High Court itself, because the court's establishment and authority were defined within the same convention-based framework. It cannot lawfully rule on the validity of those conventions without judging its own standing. Its jurisdiction derives from the very structure whose legality would be under examination, a circular dependency that leaves every arm of government resting on assumed, not proven constitutional ground. It must be understood that constitutional conventions are not unlawful in themselves. When introduced transparently and ratified in accordance with Section 128, they become a legitimate extension of the people's constitution. The issue is not the existence of conventions. It is how they were implemented in 1901. They were inserted. Without debate, without referendum, and without the people's consent. Had they been adopted through the proper constitutional process, they would stand as law today. Because they were not, they remain assumed conventions, not lawful constitutional amendments. Ladies and gentlemen, what I describe to you is not rebellion with rifles and barricades. This is not revolution with blood in the streets. This is not tyranny with iron fists and midnight raids. This is something far more insidious, far more complete, far more permanent. What occurred between December 19th, 1900 and May 9th, 1901 was, in truth, a silent coup. Not by force, but by substitution. Power was not seized through rebellion. It was quietly redirected, away from the people who had ratified the Constitution, and into the hands of a few who reshaped it without their consent. Had the first Parliament simply debated those conventions and put them to the people under Section 128, they almost certainly would have been approved. Australians in 1901 were proud, united, and eager to build a new nation. One debate, one vote, one act of honesty, and Australia would have had a lawful, unambiguous constitutional foundation. Instead, a handful of men changed history without the people's consent. And we've been living in the shadow of that silent coup. ever since.